Right. Hello everyone. My name is Sunghyun. You can call me Yago. I'm one of the lecturers for the upcoming UADC workshop. So what I'm gonna do is to do a brief lecture about South Korean politics. So yeah. Just a few disclaimers. Firstly, this is just a brief overview of South Korean politics. I'm not like a super expert of South Korean politics as well. So if you are interested in this topic, I highly encourage you to also do some research on South Korean politics so that you can be more knowledgeable about like more of the details of the current and past situations. Secondly, I think like compared to other lecture topics, I think this one is a bit too niche, but I hope that more people are interested in Northeast Asian and also Korean issues. So I would highly encourage you to also take this lecture if you have time. Yeah, lastly, I might also be biased, especially when I am also living in this country with my own thoughts and perspectives. I will try to be as impartial as possible. Please be mindful that I might also have some political biases in terms of certain issues as well. Yep. So before I move on to the actual, I guess, like events that has happened, i.e. martial law or impeachment, I just want to talk about the background information of like who are the important people and figures that you have to know in order for you to understand the situation better. There are two people, obviously. The first one is the person in the right side. I put this person in the right because this person is right wing in South Korean politics. So this person is called Yoon Sung-yeol. So this person was a former president of South Korea because he is now impeached. So yeah. So he is from the People Power Party, which is the conservative party of South Korea. And the person on the left side is a person called Lee Jae-myung. He is from the Democratic Party of Korea, which is the Liberal Party. There are some other parties in Korea as well, but they are relatively smaller than these two parties. So I would say that it's not like a perfect two-party system, but I think in most of the times, unless it is like a proportionate voting system for National Assembly, most candidates and the most elected candidates are from either of these two parties. So basically, Lee Jae-myung was the competitor of Yoon Suk-yeol in the past presidential election. So yeah, let's talk about the presidential election then. So in 2022, we had like the 20th presidential election. And as you can see, this person is Yoon, this person is Lee. And if you compare the, actual votes that they got, it's really small margin. It's like less than like, I guess, it's less than like a 1% margin, right? So it was a really, really tense fight. So neither of the candidates gained simple majority. But the reason why Yoon Suk-yeol was able to at least gain this amount of vote was because all the conservative like candidates have merged into one, which was Yoon Suk-yeol. So there were, I guess, like a couple of other candidates who also gained quite substantial votes, but these people merged into one so that they can consolidate conservative votes. Compared to that, liberal candidates did not. This was because this person is from the Justice Party, which is the Labor Party in Korea. This person refused to merge into one with Lee Jae-myung. So I know this is just like a hypothetical scenario, but if it was the case that this Labor Party candidate merged themselves into one with Lee Jae-myung, probably I think there is a high possibility that Lee Jae-myung is elected for the last presidential election. So in the end of the day, I know this is like a retrospective type of thing, but these Labor Party voters, actually including myself, ended up becoming the swing voters. And in the end of the day, because they didn't merge into one, Yoon Suk-yeol was elected. And there has been a lot of like debates on this as well, like in terms of like whether Lee Jae-myung should have like, like merged into one, like to what extent can we like, I guess, blame these 2.4% of voters who decided not to vote to lead Jae-myung, although they knew that this is like a quite contentious election or whatnot. Yeah. So on one side, on one side, especially the Lee supporters, these people are saying that like, but we should like prevent the worst from happening. But because these people decided to vote for the uncontentious candidate who is almost like 100% not being elected, these votes, 2.4% of vote has just been wasted compared to like, of course, people who ended up voting for this like Labour Party candidate. Like these people also had some good reasons to vote for this candidate even though they knew that their votes probably wouldn't matter for the actual results for the election. So yeah. And I also want to talk about the political landscape of Korea a little bit. So I think there is a really significant political divide based on gender and age. So basically this is like the like people in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s and more. So these are like men, women, men, women, men, women, men, women, men, women. So if you can see the tendency for age of like 40 and more than 40s, there is no significant difference in terms of gender. Like in terms of like within the generation, there's no like significant gender divide. But for the people in the 20s and 30s, it is a really, really different story because even within, I guess, like people in the 20s, men tend to lean to the conservative party significantly more, while the women are vice versa. And the reason for this is because like these men, these people are more, I guess, like buying into the narrative of I guess like more technical equality type of like values. They also push for things like anti-feminism because they believe that feminism is no longer a thing, especially in the younger generation because of like increasing gender inequality and stuff like that in Korea. By the way, this is not necessarily true if you actually look at the gender gap index that has been published by international organizations. Like Korea is significantly still patriarchal and misogynistic society. But like perceptionally speaking, these men do perceive as if they are being like reverse discriminated by the society because of things like feminism, because of things like political correctness and stuff like that. And I think one of the reasons for that is because men in Korea, unless they are like super, I guess like they have like super big physical or mental problems, these people are conscripted to the military, and that's one of the reasons as to why these people believe that they are significantly disenfranchised because they're like 2 years of their 20s are just like being taken away by the nation, and obviously the life in the military is not necessarily pleasant. Compared to that, like women, I guess like this is also like a response to, I guess, the anti-feminism or anti-PC movement that is happening within like 20s men, 20 and 30s men. But also at the same time, there has been like a rise of feminism within like women demographics, as well as more awareness on political correctness and stuff like that around social media. So of course it cannot be like overgeneralized. Just because you're men doesn't mean that you're always anti-feminist, like look at myself. Um, Vice versa is true. Like just because you are a young woman doesn't mean that you are necessarily going to heavily buy into feminist like rhetoric and stuff like that. So everything is on spectrum. But if we are just talking about the general tendency of each of the demographics, I think this is quite significant. And this is also reflected into the actual support rates for each of the candidates. And I think this has also manifested into different political manifesto from different politicians. So during the presidential election, Yoon heavily targeted men in their 20s and 30s, and he actively made comments like there is no such thing like structural gender equality. He just refused like structural patriarchy and misogyny. And he also made like a political like manifesto saying that he would massively increase the salary for conscripted surgeons. So basically like the conscripted people are now going to be significantly paid more, according to his political manifesto. And actually, I was conscripted to the military right after the presidential election. And it seemed like a lot of men in my age actually decided to vote for Yoon because of this promise. But in the end, like obviously this was a populism policy and it took a lot of money for this to actually happen. So although there was a meaningful increase, the degree of that increase was not as high as what Yoon initially promised during his presidential election. The third thing he talked about was abolishing the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family because this seemed like a symbol around like younger men. This seemed like a symbol for, like unfairly favoring women and stuff like that. So that's why he also said that like we're gonna get rid of this. Obviously, he didn't in the end of the day. And there are some like statistics that show that like he ended up actually using more money for this like ministry. I guess like it is not necessarily for the gender equality policies, but because like Korea is suffering from things like aging population and low fertility rates. Obviously, I think there probably would have like significant spending on that issue. But anyways, compared to that, Lee actively targeted 2030 women because he realized that these demographics are not yet decided in terms of like who to vote for the presidential election. And also, especially when Yoon is actively targeting 2030s men, then probably the untapped demographics are the women who are in 20s and 30s. So what he did was numerous things. He also appointed a person called Ji-hyun Park for a really important position in the women committee within his like, campaigning camp. This Shinhyun Park person was one of the people who publicized the information and I guess like accusation about a really, really bad online sex tape crimes. It was really sensational in Korea, I guess like in 2020 or something. So there has been like a systematic like child porn um channel in Telegram where these people were maliciously taking advantage of like vulnerable young women and making sex tapes and they were just like selling it to like people and stuff. So it was really bad. And many people were punished, although I think that the punishment was not enough. I think there were a lot of people who were left unpunished. But anyways, this Ji Park person was one of the people who were leading that publicization process so that people would be aware of those problems and that also led to a lot of like punishment to the relevant people who deserved the punishment. Anyways, this is why this Jian Park person was pretty much like a really important and symbolic figure, especially in the perspective of like younger women, because these younger women were the ones who resonated the most for the messages coming from like those accusations for those like sex tape crimes that has been happening. So yeah, that's why this person being appointed was also one of the important, I guess, events for Lee Jae-myung to, I guess, they gain more votes and supports from these demographics. Obviously, he also pushed forward a lot of policies that are that might be more attractive to younger women. For example, like policies against sex crimes, dating violence, and stalking, which has been a really big issue in Korea. Those type of like dating violence and stalking has been happening for quite a long time, really frequently, and that's why a lot of people were demanding for, I guess, like a more stringent regulation on these issues. And also, Lee also wanted to push for things like working mom-friendly policies to the extent that, for example, like women who are planning for, I guess, like having a child, probably these people would also have more favorable stance towards Lee. So this is a major timeline for the political, I guess, like events that has happened recently in South Korea. So in December 3rd last year, in 10:27 p.m., martial law has been declared. Um, just like a side note, everyone, like almost everyone in Korea, or at least like the people around me, um, in Korea, actually thought that this was like a joke or fake news because like martial law sounded like so distant from our actual lives. So like everyone, almost like nobody actually believed that like martial law has actually been declared. But like, yeah, it has been declared. But anyways, um, after like almost like 2 to 3 hours, after the martial law has been declared, in December 4th, 2024, around 1 a.m., martial law has been lifted by the National Assembly. So right after the martial law was declared, the members of the Congress, the National Assembly in Korea, these members assembled in the National Assembly, and after fulfilling the quorum for the majority votes, they voted to lift the martial law. So they successfully lifted the martial law. So basically, the martial law only lasted for like 3 hours. In December 14th, the impeachment motion has been passed by the National Assembly. And this also has a quite long story. I'm also going to discuss this. Starting from January 14th to February 25th, it is quite a long period of time. There has been 11 times of hearing about the case of Yoon Sung-yeol for his impeachment. And also it took another 1 month and a little bit more time for the Constitutional Court to make the final decision to impeach Yoon Sung-yeol. So yeah, it hasn't been long after our former president has been impeached. So what are the contents of the martial law and why were those contents obviously unconstitutional, really, really problematic? So the reason and the justification coming from Yoon for declaring the martial law was saying that the Democratic Party, which was Lee Jae-myung's party, is dominating the National Assembly, and he actively labeled these Democratic Party as anti-state forces, leading to political deadlock, which also has been labeled by Yoon as national emergency. And the reason why he is, I guess, using this type of rhetoric is because, according to the Constitution clearly stipulates the very, very stringent conditions for legitimately declaring the martial law. So it has to be a really big national emergency that is comparable to actual war or actual like nation level riot to the extent that the national security is being, like in danger and stuff like that. So he really needs to frame this current situation as if this is a national emergency situation. Of course, in the end of the day, Constitutional Court did not think that this was a sufficient reason for him to declare the martial law, and that's one of the reasons why he was impeached, but this was the rhetoric that he used. And also, the way in which martial law has been declared and I guess like materialized was not allowing any political activities. This also included National Assembly, and so that's why he actually, put military forces into the National Assembly to prevent the National Assembly from lifting the martial law, although he failed. It was his attempt to do that. And this was also really problematic because obviously National Assembly is the legislative branch and the president is the leader of the administrative branch. And according to the division of like the three forces of the nation, you cannot interfere or intervene into the other branch of the nation because obviously that is just like, just intervening and breaching the basic division of power type of law. But he indeed insisted to do this, and this has been also the reason for him to be impeached. He also said that he is going to do media control and he's gonna, like control things like fake news. I'm not sure if it is actually fake news, but like, like he just wants to get rid of like news that is not really, I guess, favorable to him. Also, he said that medical professionals should come back to work. Otherwise, they will be, I guess, like really like sent to jail and stuff like that. Medical professionals, the reason why these people are specifically mentioned is because there has been like a prolonged conflict between the Yoon administration and the medical professional, especially the doctors, because Yoon administration wanted to increase the number of doctors while the doctors did not want to do this, and therefore they went on a strike, and it has been like a quite significant health crisis as well. So he also wanted the medical professionals to come back to work as soon as possible by using his, I guess, like overwhelming power of martial law. And the next story is, I guess, like a more interesting story because this also explains how martial law was lifted. And in retrospect, I think this is quite meaningful and even miraculous because martial law, if it has been like really if it was done in a really, effective way, then probably our country would have been like in a really different state. But there has been a lot of efforts, both from the citizens, also from the members of the National Assembly, also from the people in the military. These people also did not like actively, I guess like really destroy the National Assembly to the extent that the National Assembly was unable to like make a decision to lift the martial law. So there has been a lot of like I guess like cooperation out of like goodwill. So if you can see this, sorry, if you can see this, these people are actually like special forces that has been allocated by the president and also like the other minister of the national security who made a command to allocate these people in the National Assembly. And if you can see, these people are not just like ordinary like soldiers. These people are special forces with special equipments that can, like possibly really harm the citizens as well. So there has been obviously a lot of like collision, like actual physical collision between those military and the citizens because the citizens wanted the National Assembly to have enough time to assemble and therefore have the votes to make sure that the martial law is lifted. Whereas the military, they were supposed to, claim the National Assembly so that the National Assembly is unable to make that particular decision to lift the martial law. So yeah, there has been like a really big conflict here. Although there has been like zero actual casualties, um, I think this is like just like out of the goodwill of the individual soldiers. It was not necessarily like the command coming from like the people who are on the above the hierarchy. Although the people in the upper hierarchy, these people assert that they made a command to not actively harm the civilians, but like we don't know. And like this is a photo of the Speaker of the National Assembly. Because like the National Assembly, the main gate has been already possessed by the military. So they actually had to find alternative ways to enter the National Assembly building. And this is one of the ways that they did it. So they just like climb up the wall. Yeah, this also has been one of the iconic, like I guess like photogenics of the martial law. And I think this is one of the epitome or really important like photograph for the martial law and the sacrifice of the citizens. This person is just like a civilian. This person is not a member of the National Assembly. I think she is affiliated to the Democratic Party, but still she's like she doesn't have like any like actual political power in the National Assembly. She went to the National Assembly building, and when those soldiers, the special forces, were forcefully trying to remove the civilians from the like main gates of the National Assembly, this person actively went against the special force soldier and saying that like yeah, go ahead, like shoot me. You are doing something wrong. I am protecting this country's democracy. So you gotta shoot me if you are really gonna go forward with this one. But like in the end, like this person was not shot, but this actually showed a really I guess this gave a lot of inspiration to the people because this showed the boldness of this person, not even like and not even like I guess like hesitating to risk their lives to protect democracy. So it has inspired a lot of people. And after the declaration of the martial law, there have been a lot of like people who actually I guess like assembled in front of the National Assembly building to I guess like do some protest and stuff like that to show that the civilians are not accepting this martial law and stuff. And as you can see, the public response to this martial law was really bad, of course. And I think the one of the reason for this is not just because like martial law itself is like a um bad concept. Like not like a bad concept, but like a bad concept to like declare in this particular context. But if you actually look at the history of South Korea, martial law has a really nuanced history because it is tightly related with history of military dictatorship. So Korea has been under military dictatorship for several decades, and during that period, a lot of democracy has been ignored. A lot of people has just been arrested, tortured, and killed by the state for no actual good reason. These people has just been labeled as communist, and these people were just like sent to jail. These people were just like killed and stuff. So all this history was possible because the military dictatorship was in power, and the way in which the military dictatorship consolidated their power and legitimized military seizing the power of the nation was by declaring the martial law. And that's why there have been there is like a huge political trauma for Korean citizens in terms of the military dictatorship. And the very fact that this president arbitrarily just declared martial law for no good reason is obviously going to trigger this particular historic trauma for a lot of people. And obviously, this really made people angry. So there has been a really, really, really large scale, long lasting protest because as you can see in the timeline, like it has been quite a long process. It took about like 3 to 4 months for the democratic process to, impeach this person. So during that like 4 months, like almost like every week, there has been like a really large scale rally in the middle of the metropolitan area. And one of the, I guess, interesting part of this public participation is that there has been increasing participation of younger generation, and especially the women in 20s and 30s. So you can also connect this to the demographic political divide that I just talked about, like in the first part of my lecture. And these people, because these people were actually really angry, and of course, like I think there has been some accumulated discontents and anger against Yoon as well. But anyways, these people rallied almost every week. And I think one of the cultures for the political protests and rallies has also changed. And this has been shown by the type of like equipments that these people are using. And I guess like the way in which these people are marching and protesting and stuff. For example, there has been much more usage of light sticks. Light sticks is basically for like, like cheering for the K-pop idols, and each of the K-pop idols actually have different light sticks and with different colors. And this is like a really important part of the fandom culture of K-pop. So the very fact that many people brought this light stick instead of the candle. Candle, by the way, is the traditional way in which people were, I guess, like um protesting. So they use the candle, I guess like with the hope that the society will change, society needs to change. But that candle has changed into the light stick. And this light stick, which obviously is largely possessed by younger women who are the main consumers of K-pop industry. These people actively collectivized in the middle of Seoul, as well as many other regions. And they sang a lot of like K-pop songs. This is also the change in the culture as well. Because like in the past, like people used to sing like a more traditional type of like songs that we used during our democratization period where people were like voicing up for democratization of Korea and that there were songs that were used for that protest and marches. Now we are using K-pop. Obviously, there are a lot of like other like relatively older generations who are also actively participating as well. But what I want to point out is that there has been a visible change in the culture of protest, and um it's largely attributed to the increased participation of younger generation, particularly 20-30 women. However, there are other sets of demographics who were actively going against the impeachment as well. And these people are called like these people are of course very conservative. These people support for conservative values and stuff like that. These people want the conservative party to, continue on seizing the power. And the interesting part is these people are always bringing not only the Korean flag, but also the US flag for some reason. These people, traditionally, like the conservative political base, these people have prioritized relationship with the US because obviously US is the most affluent country. US is also a capitalist, like democratic country compared to other socialist like communist nations like China. So these people are actively anti-communism, actively anti-CCP, and these people also label the Democratic Party as, I guess, like pro-CCP, pro-China, and these people deserve to be, like eliminated by the political system. So these people just want pro-US. Um, I guess like these people just firmly believe in like Korea-US cooperation and stuff. But like interestingly enough, although these people were actively asking for not impeaching for President Yoon, actually the White House, the actual US, was kind of like indifferent of this issue. Um, Biden administration said that like gave the nuance that like Yoon did something wrong. And he kind of like deserves to be like treated by the democratic procedure. And also like the White House, even the Trump administration they are not necessarily like supporting Yoon. They're just saying that like we have to accept what the Constitutional Court has decided. So basically like although they are pro-US, they don't really care about like what the US is actually thinking about. Like, but anyways. Also these people are heavily tied to religion, especially like Christianity. So there has been a lot of like conservative churches who also contributed into like this type of like conservative rally and stuff like that. So these religious groups also host those rallies, also donate a lot to these rallies, um, so that their believers also participate in these rallies a lot as well. So although there is no like a picture in no Israel flag in this picture, actually some people bring Israel flag into this rally, and the only way to explain that is to explain it by some religious connection. Obviously, Israel is not Christian, but I guess like there are more connection, I guess, to some religious similarities, I guess. Although I'm not really knowledgeable in religion, so please forgive me if I am um talking about something really incorrect. But yeah, anyway, there are sometimes Israel flags in those rallies as well. The third thing is about the demographics. So mostly I think this is still consisted of more of the older generation compared to this one. However, the younger participation also increased. So the younger participation, I guess like younger men who actively mm, support conservative values and conservative parties. These people support Yoon as well, and these people also want Yoon not to be impeached. So these people also actively come to rallies and stuff like that by, I guess, like wearing some um, college jackets to express their identity as a college student. And also these rallies actively make use of these younger participants to also promote themselves as like a young rally, young protest, because they also want to seem as young as this protest. They don't want to be seen as, really just old people protest. Yeah. So this is also like a really interesting part. Also, there has been like a violent protest that has been done by this ultra conservative like subset when the arrest warrant was issued by the court against obviously Yoon Sungyeol president. So when this warrant was issued, there has been a violent protest at the court. So they vandalized the court. They went inside the office. They, like ruined the PCs and the devices that these people were using. Some police officers has been injured and um pretty severely, and these people were in like like bleeding and stuff like that. So it has been pretty much like radical, and it also reminded me of like the pro-Trump protest that has happened in the past when there has been like a accusation coming from Trump about like the, rigged election and stuff. But anyways, there has been a violent response, and that's why um there has been a lot of like worry that maybe there can be another violent response after the decision of the Constitutional Court, when the Constitutional Court actually makes the decision to impeach Yoon Sung-yeol, because these people might also be equally angry to the extent that these people just like vandalize the Constitutional Court and stuff like that. But in the end, it did not happen. I'm going to explain as to why it didn't happen as well. So so basically, in order for the Constitutional Court to even do the trial for the impeachment case, the National Assembly needs to pass the motion for the impeachment. And the process of this impeachment motion was also really tough because there has been two attempts for passing the impeachment motion. The first of which didn't pass because the quorum was unfulfilled. The reason why the quorum was unfulfilled was because in order for the impeachment motion to even pass, or even for the vote to be activated, we need supermajority, which is basically 200 members of the National Assembly out of 300. But the Democratic Party only had 191 people. I guess this includes like everyone other than the People's Power Party. So People Power Party, in this first impeachment motion, they decided to not show up at all to the vote. And this has been like a really, I guess, like bad thing. A lot of people were angry, including myself, because like the Democratic Party was accusing the People Power Party for not even showing up to the vote because voting is like a, democratic process. If you really want to go against the impeachment, you can just show up to the vote and you can just vote against the impeachment motion. But these people did not show up to the vote. Um, I guess there has been a lot of like I guess like analysis on the reason why these people did that. But I think the one of the most compelling reasons is because the voting for the impeachment motion is anonymous. So if you enter the voting booth, you don't really know who voted for what. And that's why it is really hard for the People Power Party to control the actual result of the vote. And maybe I guess like they suspected that some people, some members of their party would vote for the impeachment motion. So they just decided to not show up to the vote. So the impeachment motion didn't pass because the quorum was unfulfilled. So the vote cannot even be activated. The second impeachment motion, after I guess like a week or so, this time it has passed. This time People Power Party, even them show up. Obviously, I think like it's because there has been a lot of like criticism and controversy about this issue. And in the end of the day, the thing that the People Power Party worried happened because the 12 members from PPP voted for the motion, which means that the impeachment motion has been passed. Then what was the, I guess, stance of the People Power Party about the impeachment of President Yoon? So the major, I guess, like the visible stance for the People Power Party was that they will continue to support Yoon even during the impeachment trial process. There were some reasons for this. The first reason, obviously, is because if Yoon is impeached, obviously Lee Jae-myung will be extremely, extremely empowered, right? Because like he was like the strongest contender of Yoon. But now that Yoon is impeached, then now it is like the perfect time, perfect momentum for Lee to, like be in the presidential position. So the main rhetoric coming from the People Power Party is that like, yeah, like we agree that Yoon might have done something wrong, but we still should support Yoon because we shouldn't let Lee Jae-myung be the president. So I think this worked to some extent because Lee Jae-myung, as much as he is supported by a lot of people, he's also hated by a lot of people as well. I'm gonna explain about his risk, and his like some weaker points as a politician. But that's one of the reasons why People Power Party used this strategy to antagonize Lee so that they have the legitimacy to support Yoon and his protection from the impeachment. The second reason is because of the party leadership, because the party leadership of the PPP was really pro Yoon. So these people still wanted to, support Yoon because obviously these people are tied to Yoon as well. The third reason is also because of the far right supporters that these people I talked about. So these people actively went against the impeachment. So probably you cannot let these people down. From the moment you say that, oh, like we're fine with impeachment, these people would be super angry and yeah. So you don't want that. So this is why, in a visible sense, at least like on surface level, PPP supported Yoon. They said that impeachment shouldn't happen and stuff like that. But obviously, there has been some disagreements among different members of the PPP as well. Some minority members of PPP said that we should support impeachment because martial law is something that cannot be justified. This is not about the political leaning. This is about the basic principles of democracy. So there is no legitimacy for us to, support Yoon who have done a really bad thing for the democracy. So we should support for the impeachment and we should prepare for the next election and stuff like that. But these people were not really heavily supported from the majority of the party members anyways. So yeah, these people were not, I guess, like as significant. But at the same time, this is the like tricky and sneaky part. So on surface, on media, on public, these people were saying that we are going to support Yoon till the end. But at the same time, they were preparing for the next election as well. Because like, as you can see, after the president was impeached, a lot of prominent members of PPP declared and announced that they are going to run for the next presidential office, which cannot happen if they were not preparing for this run before the impeachment process. So probably they were already preparing for the next election as well. I guess they were preparing for the worst case scenario. Yeah, so like this was like I guess like a two kind of like a conflicting thing that the PPP was doing. On surface level, on public, they were saying that like they were supporting Yoon and stuff like that. But inside, they were also preparing for the next election so that they can have like a good enough candidate for the next election. So after a really, really, really long deliberation that took about like more than a month, I guess like 2 months actually, the Constitutional Court made the final decision to impeach President Yoon. It took really long, and while it took so long, there has been so much controversy because like people were suspecting that this is because there is no unanimous like call, there is no unanimous decision. Like these like constitutional like court juries are also, I guess, like justices. These people are also just like fighting against each other and stuff like that. So there have been a lot of controversy, and also this has led to a lot of like social confusion and unrest as well, because a lot of people were asking for the result as soon as possible. A lot of people were also making a lot of like, like unknown conspiracy theories about the Constitutional Court about why the decision is not coming up and stuff. So in the end, after really long deliberation, the final decision was a unanimous decision for the impeachment. In retrospect, by the way, this person is the leader of the Constitutional Court back then. When this person finished his term as a Constitutional Court justice, he talked about like a story pretty indirectly. According to his comments, it seems that there have been a lot of like disagreements among different justices because those justices are appointed by different people and some of them were appointed by Yoon. So yeah, obviously these people are more conservative leaning, and I guess like it took much more time and effort to actually convince these people to also support for the impeachment and stuff. But anyways, in the end of the day, all grounds were acknowledged. There were like I guess like 5 reasons for the National Assembly to ask for the impeachment, And all of the 5 reasons were acknowledged by the Constitutional Court as a legitimate reason to impeach this president. So first, for example, like the martial law was unconstitutional, putting military in the National Assembly was also unconstitutional because it violates the division of power principle and stuff like that. So yeah, all those things were acknowledged. But the Constitutional Court also mentioned that the political gridlock that has been, I guess, like made by the National Assembly, which is dominated by the Democratic Party, they are also, I guess, like responsible. They could have like done better. Like this was the actual comment coming from the Constitutional Court. So although the Constitutional Court thinks that the response to the political gridlock from the president was illegitimate and unconstitutional because obviously it was disproportionate, but the Constitution also wanted to make the message that just prolonging the political gridlock and not making any negotiation and stuff is not a really good democratic process. You should be able to like reach some degree of consensus and negotiation, so that the democratic process can be better kept and better policies can be made and stuff like that. And I think this was one of the important parts of the Constitutional Court decision because one of the reasons why a lot of people protested against the impeachment was because they hated the Democratic Party. They hated the fact that the Democratic Party does not want the administration to pass any type of policy. And this was possible because they had the simple majority of the National Assembly, by the way. So there has been obviously a political gridlock, and these people thought that the reason why youth administration could not do meaningful policies is because the National Assembly intentionally blocked the administration from enacting certain policy. Actually, the vice versa also happened because the president used his veto power against a lot of like Democratic Party policies. So basically, it was like a really race to the bottom type of situation. So the Constitutional Court wanted to make the message that neither side was doing well. So you guys could have like done better. But if this is about the unconstitutionality of the actions of the president, this person deserves to be impeached. So this was the reason why a lot of like even the conservative parts of the demographics was able to at least listen to the Constitutional Court decision and accept it to some extent because they felt as if their view is also being acknowledged and validated by the Constitutional Court. So the type of like sense that these people feel is that Constitutional Court is not necessarily like biased against the president, but they are trying to make a balanced decision. So actually, if you, I don't think you need to read through the document, but if you actually read through the decision documents, like it is really well written, and it is really impressive. Anyways, yeah. And then my next and last question to ask is, who's gonna be the next president? The answer is most likely Lee will be elected. According to like the poll, most recently Lee got like 38% of the total I guess support within the poll. And even if you combine all the conservative candidates' like support rate, it is 27%, which is like 11% difference from Lee's support rate, which is quite significant considering that this is like a, like 1 versus 1, two-party type of like presidential election anyways. So most likely, I think Lee will get elected because the Conservative Party, these people, PPP do not really have like a really strong candidate that is comparable to Lee Jae-myung. However, there are some Lee's remaining risk that leads to a lot of like haters of Lee. One of them are legal risk. So there's like a real estate scandal, like saying that like he unfairly favored in terms of like the acquisition of certain real estate, if I remember it correctly, towards a certain person when he was a mayor of a certain city, or that he violated the election law during the certain election and stuff like that. Although the election law type of thing, I guess like the second trial, according to the second trial, he was like not guilty. but he still has like the last final trial. But I think the final trial would not really influence his political run anyways, so I don't think it matters as much. But there's also like a social risk that leads to really bad image of Lee Jae-myung because like there has been like a record of his voice like talking about really misogynist and violent comments about the wife of his brother. And like obviously like the conservative people are picking up his comments and like, like antagonizing Lee. And that actually worked quite a lot. So there are still a lot of people who dislikes him. I'm not sure if there are considerable amount of haters to the extent that Lee will have no chance to win. But I guess like although like the situation here is quite favorable for Lee, I think like because of his like um personality and because of his like image, I guess like there are still a lot of like significant haters of Lee Jae-myung as well. However, we also have to acknowledge that the PPP is also quite unstable because PPP they have like really, conflicting stances that are going like here and there because some parts of the party is saying that like we should support Yoon, and some parts of the party is saying that we should make a new party that supports like Yoon. And the other parts of the party says that like we should move on from Yoon because he is already impeached and stuff like that. So there's like a lot of like things going on, a lot of confusion going on. So there's like an image or the like type of like perception among the people that PPP is unable to meaningfully distance themselves from Yoon enough, which makes it really difficult for the moderate voters to resonate with PPP because obviously like the vast majority of the demographics in this country still believes that impeachment was the right decision and Yoon deserved to be Yoon deserved to be impeached. Um, Apart from like the really ultra conservative people. So obviously I think there are also some issues and problems for PPP as well. So I don't know what the result is going to be. But if I have to make a speculation, I would say that Lee is most likely to be elected. Yeah. So this is the end of my lecture. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any question or if you want to ask anything else about the Korean politics, I would really be happy to answer any of them. So feel free to, I guess, like contact me via Facebook Messenger and stuff so that I would be able to answer your question. Yep. Thank you.